we all have to define beauty and aging for ourselves, right? There is no one
Yeah.
way is the right way. We all have different DNAs. So your journey is going to be different than what my journey was. My journey is going to be
Yep.
different even in 5 years from now than what it is now. But
Yeah.
that's the great part of it, is that just total full acceptance of ourselves and
Yeah.
realizing that, you know what, I don't have to stay a size one any longer, nor do I want to stay a size one.
No, I've
You
never
know,
been a size
I
one.
I mean, just all those things that we wrap up in the messages and the stories that we tell ourselves
Oh,
that I
yeah.
don't think are necessarily our stories, right? They're really stories
Right.
somebody's put into you, or like I love my friends, and our friends don't do it not meaning to, but sometimes our stories become their stories and their thoughts. So like all those things kind of come into it. And I think when you
Yeah.
get to a point, you just start breaking free of all that. And so like for me, the
Yeah.
aging process has really been truly loving who I am today and not forgetting who I was or worried about who I'm going to be tomorrow, but just really enjoying the moment and the connections.
Hello, my extraordinary women friends. Today, I'm excited to dive into a topic that feels especially close to my heart right now, embracing our evolving beauty as women. I'm just starting my own silver journey, about 6 weeks into transitioning into my own natural silver. And I'm finding so much inspiration in the conversations around redefining aging and beauty. Joining us today is Robin Salls, the founder of Tangled Silver magazine, a publication dedicated to celebrating women and embracing our own unique version of beauty at every stage of life. Robin's message is clear. We are not born with a fear of aging. It's something society teaches us through messaging that prioritizes youth over wisdom. Her work reminds us that we each get to decide what aging and beauty looks like for ourselves. And in doing so, we reclaim our power and celebrate the wisdom that comes from a life well lived. I can tell you, I've actually really been enjoying this time of embracing my silver and just stepping into this next evolution of my life. I turned 60 last year, so I'm 61 this year. And, it's actually been really amazing. I love being 61. It's like the wisdom that comes with being my age, living the life that I've lived is really a beautiful gift. And I have so much work to do. I have so much more to contribute to this world. To me, this is a really important conversation. In this episode, we're going to explore the inspiration behind Tangled Silver magazine, Robin's personal journey that was influenced by her grandmother's graceful approach to aging, and how we can challenge societal norms to create a more empowered narrative for women. Robin's passion for celebrating women's wisdom and relevance at every age is truly inspiring. Let's meet Robin Salls.
Well, welcome to Extraordinary Women Radio, Robin. I am so excited to have you here today.
Oh, thanks so much for inviting me, Cami. I am humbled and excited to be here with you as well.
Oh, I was just so fascinated with your journey. As you know, I'm about ready to start. Well, I have started this great journey. You can't tell today because I cheated a little bit, but I have started. It's been a month since I've had my hair colored, and I have. So I'm just barely in the very baby stages of this, but I'm going to actually play with this and document it as I'm going along. I did a live on it not too long ago, like last week, where I was like, okay, I'm 4 weeks out and I'm going to just kind of track the journey and have fun with it because it's, to me, it's just, I think I'm just embracing it now. And it's so funny because 2 years ago, I was not ready to embrace this at all.
Oh, yeah.
I just was not ready. I was, I turned 61 this year, and when I was 59, I was like, oh, there's no way I'm going gray until I'm, done being an entrepreneur and, all these different things. I had all these stories up in my head. And I just have met so many people who inspire me. And you're one of the women who's really
Oh,
inspired me. And your magazine, Tangled Silver magazine, is, all about, just embracing our
yeah.
silver. And I like the word. That's the other thing, is I like the word silver over gray. I don't know if that speaks to you or not.
Yeah, that's why I kind of chose the word silver. Just like that the word gray comes with such a outdated stigma around it, right? Like gray means old, gray means outdated.
Yeah.
It's
And
It's just
silver's
like it's
shiny.
yes, yes, and silver's a gem, right? A precious gem, right? So
Yeah.
why not use
Yeah.
silver? I mean, I'm happy to say gray as well these days, but in the beginning, it was certainly easier for me to say silver than it was to say gray. It was fun to go, oh, I'm
Yeah.
embracing my silvers. Like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Totally, totally, totally. So let's talk about your magazine. So what was the inspiration behind Tangled Silver magazine?
I think if you'd asked me that question 5 years ago, because we'll be going into our fifth year this January, I
Yay.
would have told you it was truly like 2016, 2017. I was thinking about letting my grays come in, silvers come in. And I was really frustrated because I was looking around and there were no images of what I thought I would look like. I'm at that time I'm 48, 49. I
Hmm.
started the journey at 51, but I was looking around going, there's all these pictures of either really short hair on women, really old women, or the ones with long hair have in this tight little bun and they're in wheelchairs or rocking chairs. I'm like, that's not who I am. So I was kind of frustrated with that. And so I thought, well, if I need images, surely other women are thinking the same thing if they're looking at going
Totally.
this color. And at that point in time, all these young girls were paying to go silver.
To
I mean,
have
they were
that
paying big
done.
bucks to get silver, and I was paying big bucks to cover it. And I was like, huh, something doesn't make sense here. And
Yeah.
so that was kind of really the reason. And then I did a double check with my daughter because she was going to be getting married in 2019, and she's going to be a bride, and there's going to be family photos. And I was like, so honey, I'm thinking about embracing my silvers, grays, whatever they're going to be, but I can wait till after the wedding if you want. This is like 9 months. My daughter's like, no, mom, girls my age are paying for it. Do it. Just, I support you. Do it. I was like, yes. And so I did it thinking 9 months now, you'd be able to tell the difference. You couldn't tell the difference. It took a lot longer because of my hair length for me to actually get it where you could see that it was actually going silver. But it was definitely that initial of wanting to do it, tired of coloring my hair and all the rigmarole that went around that, and not seeing
Exactly.
anybody showing it as a viable color option. There was lots of magazines with
Yeah.
redheads and brunettes and blondes, but nothing to say, hey, gray is just another color in the crayon box. Let's play with it, right?
Yeah.
So
I so
that was
love
really,
it.
yeah.
That's what did
Thank
it.
you.
It was that journey for you, and it was, and so I think that, and I want to. I think that's one of the other things that inspires me about you is you have long hair, and I've always had long hair, and
Yeah.
so it's like I don't want short hair,
Yeah.
and so often that's what you see. So you have such beautiful long silver hair, and
Oh,
so
thank
that was
you.
a big inspiration to me. Um, I know that your grandmother seems to have been a really powerful role in your life. How did her attitude towards aging really influence you?
Oh my gosh. She was the most exuberant woman. And, I think that even though I tell you it started in like 2018, 2019, all that sort of with my daughter, I think in my childhood, I knew I was going to eventually end up doing this magazine because in my childhood, we'd spend Saturday mornings with my grandmother in upstate New York, and we'd be watching, sounds really silly, but we'd be watching old horror matinee movies like the old 50-foot woman, big, Frankenstein, Dracula, the originals. My grandmother was a horror buff, so I was too, but I'd be brushing her hair and it was longer and it was this white gray and it was just beautiful. And I never thought of her as old. She was just exuberant. I mean, she lived to be almost 98. She was up and dancing around. I mean, that woman in her 80s was telling me that she and my grandfather were still having sex. I was like, don't tell me that, I'm your granddaughter, But
Yeah.
they were just so full of life that she really just kind of she never thought of herself as old, and I loved that piece of her. She just was who she was. She was loving, kind,
Yeah.
and she just had this energy that just exuberance of energy and light and joy that was just always a part of her. So I think that she was really just an influence on how I looked at it. Like I wasn't afraid of aging. I mean, that's a key thing for
Yeah.
me. I don't think I truly believe we're not born with a fear of aging, but it's more that it's taught to us through all the things as we grow up, fairy tales,
Yeah.
all that sort of stuff. And my grandmother was just like the perfect example for me to have of a woman who embraced herself fully, never
Yeah.
criticized herself, or if she did, it wasn't verbally. It wasn't she wasn't speaking out into life. She was definitely speaking love and joy, and she just didn't she
Yeah.
seemed ageless to me. She just seemed
Yeah.
ageless to me.
And I like that word ageless. And it's one of the things I'm thinking, I mean, I've put a lot of thought into for my own journey has been this, connection to ourselves as we age. And I going back to when I was 59, there was like this kind of fear of, oh my gosh, I'm going to be turning 60. And I had never really noticed that big like big milestone birthday that had just jumped out at me. And I think actually probably turning 59 was a bigger one than 60 for me. And so I was, I had these like stories up in my head, and luckily I landed a client. Her name is Janine Vanderberg, and Janine, and you probably know. I think I've introduced you to
Yeah, I think
Janine. She
so.
talks about ageism all across the
Yeah.
nation,
Yeah.
and she was really beefing up her platform of her speaking and getting out and being
Yeah.
seen. And she was 70 in that year that she worked with me, the year that I was turning 60. And it was so amazing for me to see the impact she was making with her work
Yeah.
as a 70-year-old. And to me, it was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly who I needed in my life in that year because
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
this ability to be able to see, my impact is long from done, is far from done.
Yeah.
I have lots I want to be doing in this world. And, my husband looks at retiring and he knows when he wants to retire. And me, I'm like, I'm just so not ready to retire. That's not anywhere on my horizon right now because I love what I do and the
Yeah.
impact that I can make with my work. And so when you think about aging, what has shifted for you? I mean, that's my story. What's shifted for you in your stories as you've
Yeah.
looked at it through that lens?
Well, I want to be really frank with you. I say I was not born with a fear of aging, and I wasn't born with a fear
Yeah.
of aging. And I
Yeah.
loved my grandmother, and all those years I was not afraid of it. But I'm not going to lie and not tell you that I didn't jump on the bandwagon of being scared of it.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
had
I
asked me
think
in my
that's most women who
30s,
feel that way.
yeah, I mean, in my 30s, I was definitely going, I'm never going gray. I'm going to stay blonde as long as I can, but, and for me, you keyed in on it. You said the stories that we tell ourselves. For me, that
Yeah.
fear of aging took place when I was 30, and I had a family member made a comment to me that if I didn't color my grays, I was going to look older than my mother. And at that
Mm,
moment, all my fear of not aging went out the window. And I spent the next like 22 years coloring. So,
yeah.
um, it's not that I'm like I like to tell people it's not that I'm anti-color because I colored for 22 years. I just got to the
Yeah.
point
So
where
do
like
I.
I was finally ready to just embrace who I am. And
Yeah.
in doing so, I found that even though Robin thought she had been, I'm going to talk to myself in the third person, even though Robin thought she was really confident in herself, I am so much more confident now, 5 years later, because I unpeeled all these layers that I didn't
Mm,
realize were all caught up in stuff, right? Like peeling back the onion
yeah.
in a sense. I didn't realize,
Yeah.
like, okay, I thought I was pretty confident, but really I wasn't because I was scared to let my grades come in back then, and I cared
Yeah.
more about what people thought. And you could throw a dart at me pretty easily, and if it got me, I'd be like, now I'm kind of like, yeah, bring it, like this. What I do isn't hurting you, so if I want to let my grade come in, that's great.
Yeah.
We all have to define beauty and aging for ourselves, right? There is no one
Yeah.
way is the right way. We all have different DNAs, so your journey is going to be different than what my journey was. My journey is going to be
Yep.
different even in 5 years from now than what it is now. But that's the
Yeah.
that's the great part of it, is that just total full acceptance of ourselves and
Yeah.
realizing that, you know what, I don't have to stay a size one any longer, nor do I want to stay a size one.
No, I've
You
never
know,
been a size
I
one.
I mean, just all those things that we wrap up in the messages and the stories that we tell ourselves
Oh
that I
yeah.
don't think are necessarily our stories, right? They're really stories
Right.
somebody's put into you, or like I love my friends, and our friends don't do it not meaning to, but sometimes our stories become their stories and their thoughts. So like all those things kind of come into it. And I think when you get
Yeah.
to a point, you just start breaking free of all that. And so like for me, the
Yeah.
aging process has really been truly loving who I am today, and not forgetting who I was or worried about who I'm going to be tomorrow, but just truly enjoying the moment and the connections. And
Yeah.
it's so easeful when you love yourself. It's so easy to be blissful with everybody
Yeah.
around you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I love that so much. And it just makes me even more excited to just really fully embrace this. So that's beautiful. So how do we challenge these negative messages that are out there and create a more positive narrative around growing older?
yeah, good question. I think it starts with feeling the freedom to be able to acknowledge to yourself what were your stories and why were they so strong for you, right? Because you have to
Yeah.
understand your stories in the first place. Like I said a moment ago, the one with the comment about me being older than my mother, I never
Yeah.
realized how badly that affected me until I started looking at that like 20 years later. I'm like, why did that bother me so much? I wasn't afraid of aging. My grandmother, I mean, I was a little kid that went in the nursing homes and would love to get all the hugs and kisses that, as a young child in your nursing home,
Mhm.
you're going to get loved on by every person in the room, basically. And some kids will run and scream from that. I'm like, yeah, more hugs for me. Um, so I think it's understanding our stories because once I got it, I realized, wow, there were so
Mhm.
many things that, like, you have to start with yourself first. And then, gosh, we got to give grace to the women around us. I mean, women can be our biggest cheerleaders and they can also be our biggest, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Our biggest, I can't think of what I
Adversaries.
want. Yes,
Yeah.
because we can be so critical of one another. I mean, we think we're critical of ourselves, but
Yeah.
we can also be pretty critical. So I think that another part of that is to stop some of the messaging, right? And stop
Mhm.
pitting age versus youth, or stop acting like women have to look for that fountain of youth
Right.
instead of looking for the fountain of the lifestyle that speaks to who they are today. And so I
Yeah.
think that when you start kind of keying in on what's the conversations you're telling yourself, because if you're looking in the mirror in the morning and going, oh, I got bags on my, I look pretty old today. How do you expect anybody else not to see you as old if you already see yourself as old? So I think a
Yeah.
big piece of the combating that
Changing that
is
inner
first,
narrative.
yes. And then from the internet, start challenging some of the companies. Start asking some of the
Yeah.
companies, be brave enough to stand up and say, that's not me. You're not representing me any longer.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love some of the companies that are starting to really embrace it more, like Dove. Um,
Mhm.
there's so many Taylor J. She's a clothing brand that does clothing for all women. Doesn't matter your age, size. I think when we start
Mhm.
saying, "Hey, this is what we need," quit trying to sell to me as if I'm still 20 years old, because I'm not. And
Mhm.
again, you can still cater to the 20-year-old market with also catering to the other markets, because our age doesn't make us relevant. It's
Yeah.
what we do, who we are, how we live that makes us relevant. And
Yeah.
so challenging the brands to start hearing us too and realizing that, let's face it, at our ages, we do have more of the disposable income to spend on some of these products that they want us to
Yeah.
buy. So why not talk to us as if you're truly selling them to us instead of
Yeah.
trying to make us wish we were still in our 20s?
Or try to make us change how we're evolve, how
Yes.
we're aging it
Yes.
versus like really embracing it and saying, okay, let's embrace where I am. And I
Yeah.
think companies are definitely have a long ways to go before they fully get this. You're right. There are some companies out there that have done this well. And then there's a lot of companies that just fall down day after day
Yeah.
with some of the things that come out of their mouths. And you're like,
Oh,
really? Wow.
yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, I mean, you are enlightened with it. I'm enlightened with it. We're embracing on our own terms. But there's still a lot of scare tactics that are out there. They're really still keeping women afraid to make
Yeah.
the choice for themselves on what that beauty is. They're still
Yeah.
listening to maybe their friends, maybe their partners that are saying, "Oh no, it looks like this," even though they really want it to look like this. So
Yeah.
again, it's that key that there's a long way to go, but at least we're starting to get more. Like, it shouldn't take mainstream actors and actresses showing up embracing gray for suddenly people to go, oh, it's okay. It should be okay no matter what. Because
Yeah.
if it's what you believe, what you love about yourself, then that should be enough. It shouldn't take qualifications from so and so to say that gray is suddenly okay or silver is suddenly okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
No, I
yeah,
so agree with that. Um, so how do we, I know you're often telling stories in your magazine and you're
yeah,
bringing stories to life. So what are some of the ways that you're hearing about women who are just really embracing the transformations that they're going through?
yeah. There's so many great stories out there and so many women that are sharing, but I love the ones where you they're really coming to an understanding. There's a woman, and it's not a story I personally have taken. There's a film that just debuted over the weekend, Your Roots Are Showing, which is really
Okay.
about the journey to silver. It's a beautiful
Hmm.
film. Won their first film festival best documentary of the film festival.
Oh, wow. That's
Fabulous.
awesome.
And there was a woman in there who um, she has beautiful silver hair, but what was great is on the behind the scenes, she didn't start embracing and accepting her all of herself until she started this journey with her hair first. And I
Hmm.
think that's what a lot of people miss the mark, is that it's not just a journey about hair. It becomes a journey about
Mm.
so much deeper than just your hair. So this woman started it was as she started embracing her, she realized that she was going to start embracing her curves too now instead of worrying about them as much. And it was like,
Yeah.
to hear those moments, or women that were afraid to go, they were afraid to go through chemotherapy, and then they've gone through care and lost all their hair, and now they have these beautiful silver manes that they were scared to death weren't going to be possible. And I don't want to send the message that yes, everybody's going to have beautiful silver hair. I mean, we're all different, we're all individual, right? So what works for
Hmm.
somebody might not work for the other. But I think it's the stories of seeing some of those fears that were so driven, like they were gonna have to shave their heads, and that was really scary. But then look at what they got
Right.
on the other side of it. A woman accepting herself completely, where she struggled her entire life with the way her weight, the way she looked, her curves, and suddenly realized, why am I fighting all these things? For me, it was,
Yeah.
I really was a people pleaser. If you didn't like me, I had a hard time with that because I want everybody to like me. And now I'm kind of like, well, I
Yeah.
want you to like me, but if I'm not your shot of tequila, that's okay, because some of us like tequila, some of us don't. And I think
Yeah.
that it's that journey here where we really acknowledge that and really get that we're
Yeah.
relevant at every age. And I think that the younger generation is getting much better about that. They're not nearly as concerned as the Gen Zs were about what everybody else was thinking about, everybody else was doing. They're all jumping in and doing their own thing. So I think that's a good sign for the future.
Yeah.
But I just feel like it's that embracing, and just the stories of how what they thought was a hair choice turned into be such a deeper finding of
Beautiful.
themselves.
So beautiful. I love it. So if somebody's wanting to go gray, what words of wisdom? I mean, I know there's lots of ways that somebody can, go that. And I've watched enough YouTube videos that I'm like, okay, there's lots of ways I could do this.
Yeah,
But if
yeah.
somebody's thinking about it, what words of wisdom would you give to them?
I think the first thing, it kind of goes back to, again, realize it's not an overnight journey. I mean, it can be if you
Hmm.
want to go spend thousands of dollars and have a professional do it, then they can make it happen in a day's time. For the most part, though, when you're on the journey, give yourself grace. That's really the key
Yeah.
thing. So many women will go, "Oh, I'm going to do it," and then they give up in a shorter period of time because maybe it's not what they thought. And I think that you
Hmm.
really have to understand that that first year is really a grow out process. You're not really going to
Yeah.
know what color you're going to be until much farther in your journey. You have to keep in mind too that because your silver hair is actually, it's not really silver, it's actually translucent. So, like, really, your hair shades are going to change depending on the clothing you're wearing. I think that's one of the fun things that people discover, that it's not just one way or another. Some days I look like I have still really blonde hair based on what I'm wearing. Other days I look like I have reddish tints in my hair. It's just a really unique experience. And I think to get started, you have to give yourself grace and don't expect it to happen overnight. Especially if you're going to do it the cold turkey way. I mean, that's the way I went cold turkey. You mentioned earlier the long hair. I always have my hair long. It's the longest it's ever been and the healthiest it's ever been. But I knew I wanted it. But going cold turkey meant this was going to be a long journey because I wasn't going to just chop it off and let it come out. I you know had the long grow out process. So I think you have to just give yourself grace. And then I'm going to tell you, look for a hairstylist who's going to work with you and encourage you and support you rather than convince you not to. Because if you really
Yeah.
want to do it, they work for you. Keep that in mind. Your hairstylist is supposed to be supportive of what you desire. And finding the right one to help you is going to be the best way, because they can usually they've gone to school. I will say that I've had many hairstylists tell me that they don't actually study about specifically gray hair in the past. That might be changing nowadays as more and more of them are doing more of their own research on it. But finding that hairstylist is going to help you stay healthy, and then just trust what your goal is, what you're looking for, and that you'll get there
Yeah.
with grace and time.
I love it. I love it so much. So tell us a little bit about the journey of your magazine. Just the start. I mean, I know you've hit on the start of it
Yeah.
already, but like just the journey of growing it and what you've learned over the last 5 years of having a magazine. I know at least one of my clients has a magazine right now. So any advice you have along that?
It was really funny because I was told I was kind of crazy because I was starting a magazine when a lot of the larger magazines were starting to backtrack away a little bit or closing down.
Hmm.
Um, so I think in that way, what I found is that for me, I really focused in on my niche market, which was,
Hmm.
there are already magazines for women embracing midlife and lots of shades of colors, but there wasn't anything specifically to address the needs and the questions I had for going gray. So I think
Mhm.
in that way, what for me was really learning to actually, we grew up being told lots of things, have several different streams of income, and it's not that I don't believe in those things, but for me, I felt like I really needed to focus in on what was my niche. I don't need to
Absolutely.
speak to everybody. And so for
Yeah.
me, that's been the biggest learning process for me with the magazine is if I deter off a little bit and try to broaden too much, then the women that are really coming because they're looking for the information specifically for leaning
Mhm.
into silver feel discarded and lost. So like you really have to like lean into what you truly are. You're like I love you posted something today about
Your
your journey,
roles, the
like
roles.
your
Yeah, the
roles,
role that
yes.
yeah.
Like giver and that you find yourself a giver. Like I think those are really key things. Like I will tell
Yeah.
everybody I went to your Ignite Women. It was fabulous. It was beautiful. It was so thought provoking that I was going, oh, I do that. Oh, I do that. Oh, I need to work on that. So I think that that's the key thing when you're doing something with, for me, it was honing in on my niche, honoring my gifts of what I bring to the table. And
Yeah.
then also, and I'm working on this one, is letting go of the things that I am not the expert at, right?
Right.
And realizing that I can trust others around me to help fulfill the whole goal of what we want, which is our community.
Fabulous.
We
Yeah.
wanted a community that uplifts and supports women. That you don't have to feel ashamed. You can come cry to us if you're upset about something. You can celebrate, and that's within a community. And so, releasing some of those control lean handles that sometimes people can. I am a Leo at heart, so I was born in August, so I tend to have a little bit of that. Can I trust anybody else with this? This is my baby, and but yet finding to realize that yes, there's a lot of really wonderful people that you can trust with your business, your life. The whole. You just have to find your tribe.
Right. I love it. I love it so much. So where can people subscribe to your magazine and learn more about you? Where can they follow you?
Yeah, I'm on most of the social networks. Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm not on TikTok. Please, no hate for that. I know everybody
Yeah,
says to be on TikTok,
I'm
but
not either.
I just can't get into TikTok yet. Um, Instagram, Facebook, tangledsilvermagazine.com is the easiest place to go over to find where you can subscribe. We're updating things going into 2025 and have exciting things. We're going from 6 issues a year to 12 issues a year. So it's
Oh,
a great
wow.
time to
I need to
come
get in there
aboard
and
and
get
play
signed
with
up.
the community.
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally, totally. And then the final question I always close with is what are three pearls of wisdom you'd like to leave with us today?
Pearls of wisdom. Um, I don't want to repeat myself either. I want to kind of so I think like the pearls of wisdom are a truly listen to whether you call it your being, your spiritual being, your like listen to the voices that are yours and kind of tune out the ones that aren't because they don't necessarily are they're not going to serve you necessarily. And they may be kind,
Yeah,
they may not be talking to you out of hurt, but they're not necessarily going to serve you if they're not yours.
yeah.
Um, celebrate the other women around. Especially, I'm going to stick to women just because celebrate the women around you because so many of us
Mm,
could use that hug, that celebration, the real reality that we can collaborate, not compete with each other. So we should be celebrating one another more and lifting each other
yeah,
up.
yeah,
And I think the third one, um, I'm just going to say, keep in mind that we're relevant in every age and any age. It doesn't it doesn't stop when you hit a certain age. Something you become irrelevant, right? I mean,
yeah,
young, old. Let's end ageism by not pitting each other against each other. Um,
yeah.
can I end with can I end with a quote?
Oh, totally.
I love
Yeah,
to tell everybody. I do a lot of comparisons with. I love the Disney stories, but I also think those are some of the ones that were hard for us as we grow up, sending the messages pitting youth against old. And I love to think that what if it wasn't the evil queen that was the bad guy in this situation, but it was the magic mirror and its obsession with youth. I mean, think about it. Snow White and the
ooh,
Queen had
yeah,
been owning their own beauty, rocking and playing. They
yep,
could have banished ageism before it even got started. I mean, could you imagine a world without
yeah.
ageism?
Oh,
Like,
wow.
yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah,
I got
yeah.
goosebumps on that one. Well, Robin, this was so much fun to spend time with you today.
Oh,
Thank you for
thank
sharing all your
you.
stories and all your good wisdom. And just thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this.